What's up, LEGO builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. After 3 months of building and designing, my custom LEGO Star Wars UT-AT is done. I'm currently building a giant Battle of Megiddo mock, and included in that battle are a couple of UT-ATs. I knew I wanted to build and design my own, so I decided to turn that into a small build series. That way I would have more time to dedicate specifically to that vehicle, and you guys could better see the build process. This was my first time building a large vehicle and making a series out of it, and I must say I really enjoyed it. I know people are going to ask, but I don't know what the piece count is, and no, there aren't any instructions for it, and I won't be making any instructions. I just didn't have the time or desire to build this in a way that could be recreated with instructions. This video is the finale of the series, so I'm going to show you the finished tank, break down its features and play functions, as well as showing you where it will be going in my Battle of Megiddo mock. If you're pumped to see my first ever custom Star Wars tank, don't forget to execute order 66 on that like button, and let's take a look. It's so nice to finally be able to see this tank in its finished form. One big question I forgot to answer is this minifig scale or not? No, it's not. I was originally going to make it minifig scale, but it turned out that was just going to be too big and not going to work for my Megiddo mock. If you want to see like why I did what I did and how much smaller I made it, you can check out episode 1 of the building series. But you can see here's a minifig for scale. It's still pretty big compared to a minifigure, which works for me. Looks like a big tank. It's 10 inches wide and 17 inches long. It's pretty comparable to the Playscale ATTE. It's a little bit bigger, which is kind of fitting because I wasn't able to go minifig scale, so I decided to shoot for more of a play scale. So it's kind of cool that it matches up so well with the ATTE. And one big goal that I had with this tank was to make it as playable as possible. I don't know if that's a word, but just add as many features and play functions and movable things as I could, because it's one thing to build, you know, a build that you can look at, but I feel like it's another thing to be able to build something you can actually pick up and play with. So I was really happy to be able to get a lot of those features in, and that's kind of what we're going to dive into next. So this is the back half of the build. This was the easiest part to build and where I started, just because, you know, basically like a simple rectangle with sloped sides, and a big chunk of the roof actually removes so you can get to the interior. On the inside I have seats for 10 clones as well as blaster holders. I purposely made sure to make this tall enough and big enough that it looks like a minifigure could comfortably fit in there, so a minifig can stand up even if the roof is on. And then we've got the little walkway in between the seats that leads to the exit. Behind each row of seats we have 2 gunner stations. This is where the gunners who operate the anti-personnel cannons sit. Got a little control station and then some seats back there for them. They are really hard to get to, but you can fit a gunner in the seat pretty comfortably. That's pretty much it for the interior back here. I was initially thinking about adding like stations for backpacks, you know, storage space, but I ended up just not doing that. Up above we have those 4 anti-personnel cannons. It took a lot of designing to be able to get these cannons to look accurate to the tank, but also be able to rotate 360 degrees and be able to rotate up and down. That was a big one for me, because if those of you guys who followed the series will remember, the initial design of the barrel could move up, but it couldn't go any further than this, which I didn't like, because if you have a tank that sits this high up off the ground, you'll want your anti-personnel cannons to be able to point down at the ground, because that's their main focus, is to pick off and attack enemy infantry that are coming up and moving in too close to the tank for the bigger guns to hit. Now on the back we have one of my favorite features, and that's the door. The reason I like it so much is because initially when I created the door, it could only open like this, which, you know, is still enough room for a minifig to get out, but I wanted there to be more space. I just didn't like that the door only opened this high, so I actually created a double jointed hinge. So now when you open it up, you can fold it back like this onto the back of the tank, thus giving you a much wider access area into the back. And then because the tank's so high off the ground, I wanted to make sure there was a practical way for soldiers to be able to get in, so I've got this little fold-out ladder that comes down. In my opinion, the most unique feature of this tank are these repulsors. This is kind of where the name comes from. So these act like your traditional repulsors, which, you know, allow this tank to hover up off the ground, but they have another really cool feature, which is when the tank is going into firing mode, these can lock into the ground and they actually move up and down depending on the terrain. So if this thing's going over like a broken vehicle or something, or some rubble or rocks, these individual things will move up and down based on that terrain to allow it to sit on top of whatever's underneath and then lock into position with those, thus locking it to the ground. That way, no matter what's underneath this tank, it can lock into position and securely fire these main guns without the tank being in danger of tipping over or moving around, which gives this tank increased stability and accuracy. Hence the name Unstable Artillery Transport. Moving to the side, we have the first of the main guns. I mean, these were pretty simple. They aren't anything crazy, but they do pack a massive punch. The most complicated one was this big one up on top. For some reason, it's different than these other two on the sides. I don't know why, but it's also unmanned and fired from inside the tank. I'm really happy with how this one turned out. It was extra detailed, and I added these tires to give me a little, just a bigger, kind of beefier looking barrel towards the back. And then the treads added some nice texture so it didn't look too smooth. And then I've got this nice little gear piece to kind of help keep this as accurate to the actual cannon as I could. This one does move up and down as well. It was really important to me that all of the cannons were functionable. This one unfortunately can't rotate 360 degrees, but you know, can still go pretty close. This part right here was the most challenging. I mean, it is just an absolute mess of angles. You can see there's wedge plates jutting out all over the place. I tried really hard to design a smooth, seamless looking exterior, but just with all the angles and my current building skills, this was just the best I could do. But I'm honestly satisfied. Like, there aren't too many big gaps, especially compared to like a Lego set. So I feel like I did a pretty good job. Moving up here to the front, we have, I feel like, probably one of the more iconic features of the tank, and it's that wide snowplow front. It's just absolutely massive, and that was something that took a couple rounds of designing. These panels were initially skinnier and smaller, but I needed this wide flared snowplow look, and I'm happy that I was eventually able to get there. We do have some more play features or functions up here at the front. This cockpit opens up, and there is enough space for one minifig. Barely, he fits in there snugly, but fits in there just right. I've got some controls so we can operate the tank. One thing I really like about the cockpit is this tile piece I was able to put right here because it helped to make the windows look less square and gave it that triangular shape on the bottom that's the same as the actual tank. I do feel like I need to mention this. I forgot to add the Republic logos to the sides. I do have some Republic logo tiles, I just haven't put those on yet. But those will be in by the time my Magito MOC is finished. The front, we've got some lights down here on the front as well as on the front panels, and then we have a couple more anti-personnel cannons for any infantry trying to charge this bad boy. Another thing that was really important to me was making this look like an UT-AT and capture as many of its unique shapes and features as I could. And I feel like when you look at the front of this tank, you think UT-AT. A couple of things I don't like about the front are this section right here. On the actual tank, this front part is raised up higher than the rest of the body. This was about as high as I was able to get. And then these panels right here were an absolute pain. They cover a big gap between this front and side panel, so they're really necessary, but I just couldn't figure out a way to cover this little front gap here. So you can see when you look at it head on, they do stick out a little bit, but you know, it is what it is. This was kind of the best solution I could get. I figured being able to finish this and be happy with it is better than tinkering away with an unfinished masterpiece forever. And that's pretty much it for any kind of like features and functions I wanted to show you guys. Now we're gonna talk about where this thing is gonna sit in Magito. So this is what my Magito MOC is looking like so far. For anybody who hasn't been following the series, it's gonna have two bridges and a city. So the city's gonna be up here on top of this rock wall. This bridge is actually going to be sitting right here and going that direction. And then we have the main bridge, which is going to be coming in and intersecting into the middle of the rock wall. And this is where the UT-AT is going to sit. It's going to be charging up the bridge with the Galactic Marines and Ki-Adi-Mundi, assaulting the droid forces coming out of the city. This just fits perfectly on the bridge. I obviously, you know, calculated and designed this to be able to fit on here very well, but I'm just really happy with how it looks. It looks big on the bridge, you know, it takes up a lot of space, but there's still also plenty of Marines to walk on either side, and it doesn't look like too large for the bridge. It doesn't look like it's going to destroy it. And you can see it's really good that the Galactic Marines had a UT-AT or unstable artillery transport, because there's going to be lots of holes and battle damage in the road, and then you can see there's big chunks of the bridge missing on the side. So you're definitely going to want something with a lot of stability and something that can handle uneven and rough terrain. Over here on the other side of the bridge, we're going to have one of those giant Magna Octopara Tri-Droids doing battle with the tank. This vehicle series was a blast to make from start to finish. The videos were easier to make as there was less large-scale filler work like I normally have, so I could focus more on problem solving and detail-oriented building. Plus, building at a smaller scale allowed me to focus more on accuracy and playing around with different techniques. So I'd say this whole experience was a success, from the finished tank to the actual series itself. And I want to give a huge shout out to Mangetsu and Tony Hardy 99. I used both of their UT-AT designs as inspiration and even borrowed techniques and ideas from them. So this tank could not have turned out as good as it did without them. And even though this tank is done, there's still a lot to do on Magito before it's finished, so make sure to tune into the weekly building updates so you don't miss any of the action. All that being said, that wraps up this video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about my tank down below in the comments, and I will catch you next time. But until then, happy building.